Please stand by. Good day and welcome to the Using Federal Resources to Enhance Campus Security and Emergency Management Planning webinar. Today's conference is being recorded. At this time, I'd like to turn the conference over to Amy Banks. Please go ahead.
Greetings, everyone. Again, my name is Amy Banks, and I'd like to welcome you all to the webinar Using Federal Resources to Enhance Campus Security and Emergency Management Planning. This webinar is being hosted by the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Safe and Healthy Students in collaboration with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, the General Services Administration, or GSA, the U.S. Department of Justice, or DOJ, and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA, and also with the REMS TA Center website. This webinar will supplement the emergency operations planning recommendations that were put forth in the Obama administration's recently released Guide for Developing High-Quality Emergency Operations Plans for Institutions of Higher Education. This guide, along with the other two guides, the Guides for Developing High-Quality School Emergency Operations Plans and the Guide for Developing High-Quality Emergency Operations Plans for Houses of Worship, was developed by ED in collaboration with the U.S. Departments of Homeland Security, led by FEMA, Justice, led by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and Health and Human Services, representing the culmination of work by the federal government. Now I'd like to turn it over to my colleagues from the REMS TA Center. Sean?
Thank you, Amy. Before you begin, I would like to go over a few housekeeping items. Our call today is set so that only our presenters can speak to the group. However, we will be taking questions. You may submit your questions at any time during the webinar using the online Q&A chat function located on the lower right side of your screen. When submitting a question, please indicate the agency to which it is directed by listing the name of the presenter or the agency acronym at the beginning before you put the text of your question. For example, if you're asking a question to the Department of Justice, please put the letters DOJ in front of the question text. Our presenters will respond to questions during the Q&A session at the end of the training in the order in which they were received and as time permits. Just above the Q&A chat window on your screen, you'll see a file share pod that contains a downloadable PDF of today's webinar slides. Please click on the file name and then click on the Download File button to save the webinar slides to your computer. And now let's get started. Today our presenters are Amy Banks, Management and Program Analyst at the Center for School Preparedness at the Department of Education, Doc Lumpkins, Director of the National Integration Center at FEMA, Tracy Scaglione, Program Analyst in the Office of Acquisition Management, Schedules Program Office at GSA, Calvin Hodnett, Senior Management Analyst at the U.S. Department of Justice, Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services, and Nancy Kelly, Public Health Advisor at SAMHSA's Center for Mental Health Services. And now we'll begin the presentation. Amy?
Thank you, Sean. The Center for School Preparedness, which is housed within the Office of Safe and Healthy Students and the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education, does a lot of school and higher ed emergency management planning. We do so in quite a variety of ways. On this slide, you're going to see a constellation of just some of the ways that we do so. For example, we administer the REMS TA Center, who is hosting this webinar, which provides a main source for us to provide emergency management support through trainings, tools, resources, and technical assistance to K-12 schools and IHEs before, during, and after emergencies. We also represent the Education Facilities Subsector, a subsector of the Government Facilities Sector under the National Infrastructure Protection Plan, or the National Plan. This means that for the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, we are the point of contact responsible for assisting in infrastructure protection efforts and reporting on those efforts and challenges, and aligning subsector efforts with national efforts for pre-K through higher education for all schools in the U.S., public and private. In relation to institutions of higher education, or IHEs, EFS works with additional sectors, such as the transportation sector regarding school buses and transportation buses, the healthcare and public health sector regarding IHE medical facilities, the nuclear sector regarding nuclear research and test reactors, and the commercial facilities sector regarding stadiums and arenas as appropriate. In this role, we also host a secure portal on the U.S. Department of Education's Homeland Security Information Sharing Network, which I'll discuss later in this presentation. We also participate in a host of interagency efforts on national recovery, planning, and response, such as through the National Disaster Recovery Framework, or the NDRF, and with the National Counterterrorism Center to address violent extremism, radicalization, and recruitment of students. We also administer several other TA centers in addition to the REMS TA Center, such as the Educational Facilities Clearinghouse and the National Center on Safe Supportive Learning Environments, which I'll discuss in more detail later. In addition, we administer the Project School Emergency Response to Violence, SERVE grant, and this grant provides assistance to K-12 schools and IHEs to restore the learning environment to pre-incident levels following a disruptive event. As Sean mentioned, along with the K-12 Guide and the Guide for Houses of Worship in June 2013, the White House released the new Guide for Developing High-Quality Emergency Operations Plans for Institutions of Higher Education. This guide provides a process for developing and revising a comprehensive, all-hazards, high-quality emergency operations plan, which we often refer to as an EOP. This guide does not provide a template for creating a plan, but it lays out a 6-step process for a high-quality plan. And we recommend that planning teams at IHEs that are responsible for developing and revising an IHE EOP use this document to guide their efforts and compare existing plans and processes against the content and processes outlined in this guide. In support of the guides, the REMS TA Center website offers multiple webinars, including an overview that walks you through the guide itself, and a series of webinars that highlight each of the closer look sections of the guide, which you can find within the guide, such as active shooter, campus public safety, implementing psychological first aid or PFA, incorporating international students, and information sharing, to name a few. The webinars include presentations from federal experts, subject matter experts, and practitioners, and each provide additional resources and are archived and able to be accessed continuously from the REMS TA Center website. In addition, each webinar that supports the guide has an accompanying resource list that you can download for free that provides additional supporting resources. Additional webinars for IHEs include webinars on emergency management and the CLARE Act and continuity of operations, or COOP, for IHEs. Further training, online courses, and tools to support the guide and emergency management in general for institutions of higher education are continually being developed and updated and announced on the REMS TA Center website. So please continue to check back to the REMS TA Center website for new additions and supports. The website and the contact information will be provided at the end of this presentation. And finally, as the guide was an interagency collaborative effort, partner agency websites each offer resources that support the guide and IHE emergency management in general. Many, but certainly not all of these resources will be discussed in this webinar. The REMS TA Center also provides an overview of the IHE guide in the form of a live training to walk participants through the 6-step planning process and use of the planning principles. This training was developed in partnership with subject matter experts and practitioners, and its curriculum is based on adult learning principles and lessons learned from the field. This training is free for any IHE nationwide upon request to the TA Center. On this next slide, let me talk a little bit about some additional resources that we have for you on the REMS TA Center website. One interesting resource that we have on the REMS TA Center website is the resource repository. The resource repository is a virtual library of tools developed by emergency managers in the field, containing relevant resources pertinent to the needs of schools and IHEs, and their partners as they engage in the process of school emergency management and planning. Resources include sample drills, tabletops or other exercises, job descriptions, sample MOUs with community partners, organizational charts, planning guidelines, and sample policies, or school emergency management plans and their component tools and templates. In addition, we offer multiple reports and publications. Examples of publications include lessons learned and helpful hints documents, in addition to several key reports that are relevant to IHE emergency management. For example, we include the bystander report, which follows previous research findings by the U.S. Secret Service and the U.S. Department of Education. And this particular report addresses those that are on targeted school-based attacks and refers to as individuals referred to as bystanders in the report that had some type of advanced knowledge about planned school violence. And despite this knowledge that the attacks still occurred, so the study aimed to further the prevention of targeted school-based attacks by exploring how students with prior knowledge of attacks made decisions regarding what steps, if any, to take after learning the information. This study sought to identify what might be done to encourage more students to share information they learn about potential targeted school-based violence with one or more adults or staff persons. Finally, another report relevant to IHE emergency management is called Campus Attacks, Targeted Violence Affecting Institutions of Higher Education. And this report was done following the tragedy at Virginia Tech in 2007. And Ed and the U.S. Secret Service and the FBI explored the issue of violence at institutions of higher education, and accordingly, they initiated a collaborative effort to understand the nature of the violence and to identify ways of preventing future attacks that would affect our nation's colleges and universities. As mentioned previously, the national plan calls for the Education Facilities Subsector, or EFS, which includes all schools pre-K through higher education in the United States, to coordinate with federal and non-federal partners and stakeholders to help address risk management and enhance resilience for the subsector. In this role, EFS has created a subportal now that just became available as of November 2013. This portal is on the Homeland Security Information Network, or HISN, and it's designed to support stakeholders in K-12 and IHE emergency management. The HISN EFS portal is designed to help such emergency managers locate resources, tools, trainings, and have access to a variety of federal efforts to support infrastructure protection for IHEs. This system also includes a measure where users can also post information to the portal and share it with other stakeholders. Portal users must be vetted into the site, and in order to gain access, you simply contact the HISN CI, or Critical Infrastructure Mailbox, and that web address is listed here on this slide. In addition to the REMS TA Center, we at CSP, we also administer several other technical assistance centers. The first that I have on the slide here is the Education Facilities Clearinghouse. And this clearinghouse provides the educational community with a reliable resource when planning or addressing facilities and facilities projects. The clearinghouse also provides information, training, and technical assistance to public early childhood schools, K-12 schools, and institutions of higher education on issues related to facility planning, design, financing, construction, improvement, operation, and maintenance. We also administer the National Center on Safe Supportive Learning Environments that I mentioned previously. And this particular center focuses on those factors that affect the conditions for learning, such as bullying, harassment, violence, and substance abuse. This particular TA center is funded not only by the U.S. Department of Education, but also with our partners at SAMHSA, one of which is on the call today. to present coming up here. And together, we work together to address the issues that I just mentioned. Specifically, this center provides training and support to state administrators, school and district administrators, IHEs, teachers, support staff, communities, families, and any student. And the purpose of this, again, is to improve learning conditions through measurement and program implementation. So for Ed, that is what we have to present today. I'd like to now turn it over to my colleague, Doc Lumpkins from FEMA. Doc?
Great, and thank you, and thanks everybody for joining the call today. As mentioned, my name is Doc Lumpkins, and I'm the director of the National Integration Center at FEMA headquarters here in D.C. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about some of the resources that we here at FEMA provide to support the implementation of the planning guides. We collaborate with the Department of Education and the others on the call quite a bit, everything from planning guidance to technical assistance to training and the National Incident Management System, or NIMS. So first I want to talk about the training elements that are out there, some of the things that are available to you. One of the biggest of which is L363, the Multi-Hazard Emergency Planning for Higher Education. So some of you I know have taken our traditional planning courses based on CPG 101, which is the State and Local Emergency Operations Planning Guide. You'll find a lot of content here that's similar, but tailored to the higher education community. So the course objectives are outlined on the slide. I won't read all those off to you. Suffice to say that, the focus here of this training is not only those who have direct responsibility for emergency management, but others on your campus or even in the community that you work with who would be involved in the emergency operations planning. Looking at response strategies, looking at pre-incident planning, all these different things as part of the course. One of the things I would like to point out is that these courses are administered by EMI, but in many cases can be delivered locally, either yourself or through the state or state training officer in your state emergency management agency, sometimes even your local emergency manager. Also, the courses are often available in a train-the-trainer format, so that if you want to work with other schools, have somebody trained on it, and then work to train and educate cross-personnel, it's an option for you. So this course is a 3-day course. It's extensive and focuses on planning efforts. There is a companion course, G367, that's focused at the executive level. It's a 2-hour overview of emergency planning, and it's designed for executives and institutes of higher education. I have worked in campus security and campus law enforcement before, and the importance of getting the executives on board can't be understated. So having a package that can be brought to them, something that you could use yourself to educate those executives and get them up to speed on planning and the importance of what needs to be done is something that's also available. These courses and information generally on EMI's training is available on EMI's website, which is simply training.fema.gov. If you go to there, you can find all sorts of information about these courses and other courses that are available to you for your program. Training is one facet of this, of course, as many of you know. Some of you have either seen me speak or spoken directly with me before. The cornerstone of a lot of things we do around here is the National Incident Management System. NIMS, for short, identifies concepts and principles about how we manage incidents, and it's across the whole spectrum, from pre-incident planning and preparedness all the way through to response and recovery. NIMS is designed to be incredibly flexible. You can use the incident command system under NIMS, which is what a lot of folks think about when they think NIMS, to do everything from responding to a disaster or an active shooter incident on your campus to planning a wedding. It is really that flexible. The beauty of NIMS and its components, whether that's incident command, whether that's resource typing, all of these things, is that it's designed to provide a consistent and common doctrine across the entire nation. So when you talk about NIMS and you talk to about NIMS to other schools, local emergency managers, state emergency managers, law enforcement, et cetera, people use the same terminology, have the same basic understanding of the principles and concepts behind incident management. One of the things that we strongly encourage everybody to do in the education community is to get a good understanding of NIMS, to look at your, to review and implement, to review your NIMS implementation activities, to see what's going on, who needs training, to what level of training, and anything you can do to test and validate that, working with your partners in the community, again, to make sure there's a consistent use and adoption of NIMS. There are a number of key courses that institutions of higher education can use to fulfill their NIMS needs. We defer to you to determine what personnel need to receive incident command system training, larger training around NIMS, based on your emergency management program and your operational activities. A number of courses are highlighted here. You can see some of them are independent study, but a couple are taught through EMI and through your state emergency management office. There is also, much like there was for planning, there's an executive version of ICS for executive and senior officials that will help educate them in a manner that's appropriate to their level and support their understanding. We are the federal government. We like our checklists. So in order to help you, there are a number of there's a checklist available through the REMS Technical Assistance Center to look at NIMS implementation activities for schools and institutions of higher education. You can see a number of the elements here. The part that I can't stress enough on this list is exercising. Even if it's a tabletop, getting everybody around and just talking through how you would manage things, examining the NIMS implementation, the execution of incident command, and talking through how you would do that creates what we call muscle memory, so that in a moment of crisis, you're able to act almost without thinking, and that becomes incredibly important. Building off of that NIMS implementation checklist, you can see here there's NIMS training for both K through 12 and higher ed. It's not a list of requirements, rather it's a tool to assist your campus in understanding your level of NIMS implementation and what's available on the REMS TA website. So, like I mentioned before, with the training side, training.fema.gov, here is the website for everything you want about NIMS. We are updating it almost weekly as we provide new information. The doctrine stays relatively safe, but we provide expanded information based on your needs and your requirements. So as you conduct NIMS implementation in the higher education community, use this website to reach back to us and let us know what's working, what isn't, what's missing for you, so we can continue to improve what is a vibrant and growing implementation of the National Incident Management System. With that, I would like to turn over to my colleague, Tricia Scaglione from the General Services Administration to talk about their state and local programs. Tricia?
Great. Thanks so much, Doc. As Doc said, my name is Tricia Scaglione, and I'm the Policy Program Manager for the GSA General Services Administration, state and local programs. I'd like to share a little bit about some of the resources our agency offers in support of IHE emergency management. I'm going to turn the tables a little bit, and we're going to talk procurement. So GSA as an agency has many of the same roles and responsibilities for the federal government as a central procurement or purchasing office would for any educational institution or state and local government. GSA is all things procurement, and as such, we've developed the Multiple Award Schedules program, also known as Federal Supply Schedules or Schedules, to help create efficiencies and leverage buying power for federal, state, and local agencies. Under the Schedules program, GSA establishes long-term government-wide contracts with commercial firms to provide millions of supplies and services at volume discount pricing. Congress recognized the benefits of these scheduled programs and in recent years has authorized access for state and local governments to some of the schedules under a handful of programs that we're going to discuss today. GSA, in support of the previously mentioned Now is the Time plan that included presidential actions in support of safer schools, is looking to reignite our support for the state and local community, and specifically schools, in their quest for a safer learning environment. As we talk about your needs, I wanted to make sure you're aware of where GSA can help. GSA currently has 7 programs available to state and local governments. The most pertinent programs to our Safer Schools discussion are the 2 programs highlighted on the slide, Cooperative Purchasing and Disaster Purchasing. These 2 programs allow state and local governments access to GSA schedule contracts that provide information technology, security, products, services, and solutions for everyday support or disaster preparation, response, and recovery. GSA's state and local homepage, noted on the slide, contains a complete list and description of all 7 programs that GSA has to offer our state and local communities. Later in the presentation, I'll discuss with you how to get in contact with your local GSA representative who'll be able to discuss all of the programs in depth with you. Before I can get too much in depth on the programs, I wanted to talk a little bit about what a schedule contract is. A schedule contract is a 5-year indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract with 3 5-year options, so a maximum of a 20-year contract. Schedule contracts are awarded by GSA via negotiation versus head-to-head competition. In other words, 2 rival companies don't compete against one another for a schedule, but instead both companies are eligible for a schedule contract after GSA determines that they have a successful past performance, are financially responsible, and that they are offering fair and reasonable pricing. GSA then awards a schedule contract, which includes lists and descriptions of all the available commercial products and services at pre-negotiated ceiling prices and pre-negotiated terms and conditions. GSA does the upfront work to save federal, state, and local users time and money when awarding task orders off of these contracts. In addition, GSA has over 18,000 schedule contracts with vendors located globally and locally. Since our focus today is on 2 of these 7 programs, I wanted to give you a little historical perspective on the programs. The Cooperative Purchasing Program was authorized through 2 separate congressional actions, the E-Government Act of 2002 and the Local Preparedness Acquisition Act of 2008. The Cooperative Purchasing Program allows state and local governments access to 2 schedules, our Schedule 70 for Information Technology Products, Services, and Solutions, and our Schedule 84 for law enforcement, public safety, and security products and services and solutions. Under cooperative purchasing, state and local governments and educational institutions have access to purchase from schedules at any time, for any reason, using any funding available. The Disaster Purchasing Program was also authorized by 2 separate congressional actions, the John Warner Defense Authorization Act of 2007 and the Federal Supply Schedules Usage Act of 2010. The Disaster Purchasing Program allows state and local governments to purchase from all schedules as long as you are buying for disaster preparation, response, or major disaster recovery. Ultimately, state and local policies will guide use of the programs in any jurisdiction. The federal authorization does not override or take precedence over any existing school or local procurement policy. You may be asking exactly who can use the schedules under these programs, especially as it pertains to schools. It's important to note that the eligibility is determined by the statutes that I just mentioned, and any question about eligibility can be sent directly to GSA for a formal determination under the U.S. Code definitions. In general, though, users in the educational community that are eligible are local elementary, middle, and high schools operated by public school boards. Charter school programs are generally eligible if chartered and operated by local school authorities and if they provide free public education. public or nonprofit colleges and universities that are nationally accredited or recognized and provide at least a 2-year program that offers a degree or credit towards such a degree. Private or parochial K-12 schools are generally not eligible, or they may require a further determination. The key elements of eligibility are the agency character of the organization or the free character of education. So what exactly is available under these programs? This slide shows a snapshot of targeted products and services available to the schools to buy at any time in support of the Safer Schools initiative. In addition to the above, GSA vendors offer the most up-to-date technological solutions for satellite and wireless communications and all information technology. These items can support everyday accountability and monitoring as well as emergency response. And additional resources for disaster purposes include things like emergency planning services, grant management services, emergency kits, and much, much more. So now that you have a good idea of what schedules are and what's available under the program, you may be wondering when it would be useful for you. If you haven't yet figured it out, through our research on our state and local customers who've used schedules in the past, we found 3 types of purchases for which the schedules are pretty well suited. One-time large dollar buys, predictable reoccurring needs, and expeditious and emergency procurements. However, so long as it's within the scope of the congressionally authorized programs and in compliance with your own jurisdiction procurement policy, you may use the schedule-based programs for any need that you might have. Real quick, I wanted to touch base on some of the GSA resources that we have available to you. GSA has a suite of resources and eTools available to you as state or local or educational entities. Access to these resources is free and unlimited. Training is available on any of our GSA state and local programs and eTools, and the training is available both online or in person for free. The GSA state and local homepage that I discussed earlier is a good bookmark for your browser as it explains all the programs. It'll take you to links with more detailed information on everything. It's a great jumping off point. But GSA also provides a number of free online websites and eTools to assist you in using the available programs. For example, our GSA eLibrary is an online catalog of schedule offerings and contractors. GSA Advantage provides a robust search capability and purchasing capability and provides detailed information on products, including manufacturer, the contractor who's selling the product, the GSA contract number, price, a description of the product, delivery terms, and socioeconomic status of the contractor. The search tool allows you to sort results based on a number of fields, and you can also refine your search or perform an advanced search that allows you to further reduce the number of contractors listed. By comparing prices offered by multiple contractors, you can make your best value determination all on one screen. You just have to look for the Coop Perch or Disaster Recov icon to note participating vendors. GSA's eBuy is our online request for quote system, which allows users to post simple or complex requirements under specific categories of products and services and lets the vendors do the work and come directly back to you with solutions. GSA also likes to communicate with its customers using social media and interactive Web 2.0 tools that are available today. We have active accounts on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter through which we provide our federal, state, and local customers with up-to-date information on GSA programs, events, and initiatives. So follow us, friend us, and watch us. And finally, to take advantage of the training or to learn more about the GSA programs, please feel free to call or email your local customer service director or contact me directly. Your customer service directors are your local resource to support all your needs. That's what we're here for. We're happy to do it, and it's a free resource to you. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague Calvin Hodnett from the U.S. Department of Justice.
Thank you, Tricia. Greetings, everyone. Again, my name is Calvin Hodnett. I work in the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services. Today I'll be discussing campus public safety and how they relate to the new IHE guides mentioned in the ed portion of this webinar. Some of the resources related to campus public safety and emergency management that our department, U.S. Department of Justice, offers. We are reminded daily on our campuses about the countless functions and activities that are represented on our campuses by campus public safety. IHEs represent, public safety departments on the IHEs represent a plethora of different agencies and different variables as they work. There's the full-time campus police department, which has full-time sworn law enforcement officers. There is the campus security office department, which has non-sworn officers. Both are employed by the IHE. But we also have contract security now on our campuses, and that is also included with all the help that comes from local, state, and tribal police on a regular basis. These different variations of public safety on our campuses today really work together to make all our campuses safer. We don't have to look far to see the criticality of why campus public safety is so important. This picture here of the media response to the incident at Virginia Tech reminds us how planning and collaboration is critical to an effective response on our campuses. There's no time in an emergency to discuss plans. Everyone has to know their role when it comes time for an incident. The role of campus public safety on our campuses is not just to address criminal behavior, but also to prepare for emergency response to all types of campus hazards. They regularly check systems and check and test systems for readiness, which include alert notifications, fire alarms, surveillance cameras, card exits, blue lights, and other systems for which they're responsible. But they also work with their facilities departments to make sure that they regularly test emergency backup generators, portable lighting, etc., so that they're available and ready for whenever an incident may happen. Campus public safety should lead the effort to build and update the IHE's emergency operations plans and work to assemble the collaborations necessary to support it. The IHE guide has information on each of these topics as a functional annex to your IHE EOP. Functional annexes focus on critical operational functions and the courses of action developed to carry them out. As the planning team assesses the IHE needs, it may need to prepare additional or different annexes. One of the most important to describe is the workings of the Campus Threat Assessment Team. Campus Threat Assessment focuses on helping a person of concern to solve problems that motivate them to consider harm and connects them to the necessary resources to solve those problems. When successfully done, it epitomizes community policing and relies upon collaboration and partnerships in the on-campus and off-campus community. While these functions should be described separately, it is important to remember that many functions of the annexes do occur consecutively to each other. While many campuses practice drills for fires and protective measures for tornadoes and other natural disasters, fewer IHEs practice for all hazards. Emergency planning is an institutional responsibility. All IHE departments, division stakeholders should be included in the plan, development, training and exercising, response, and recovery regarding incidents occurring on campus. This should include your central and senior administration, academic affairs, student affairs, counselor and mental health services, facilities and operations, including IT and your food service. Afterwards, it is critical that all responders to an incident participate in after-action review as soon as possible following the incident. Discussions should include what worked well, what did not work as planned, any lessons learned, and how the plan can be revised. Substantial collaboration with local, state, and law enforcement and emergency responders is necessary so that first responders are aware of the IHE's emergency systems, planning, and resources. In the FEMA section of this presentation, Don Lumpkins talked about the Emergency Management Institute and its importance in building plans on campus. The campus should also develop mutual aid agreements and participate in local emergency management activities to foster information sharing, common prevention and response strategies, and also follow the ICS NIMS format, which is important that all responders, because it's so important that all responders speak in plain language to each other to avoid confusion and miscommunication in the time of incidents. The COPS office does its work principally by sharing information and making grants to police departments around the United States. One method in doing so is through the COPS office grant programs and through our funding. The COPS office offers grants through our COPS hiring program. This past year, we offered grants of $165 million to police departments around the country. In 2014, we have not received a budget this year, but we really expect to be offering the same amount to hire law enforcement, and campuses are eligible for those awards. We also provide knowledge resources to campuses all over the country on law enforcement-related issues such as assault in and around bars, burglary, and speeding on campus, but also in issues related to organizational change, such as the challenges of building your police department and also special event security. These resources, training, and other tools are available on our website. Also through the Bureau of Justice Assistance, with assistance from the FBI, the alert training, advanced law enforcement rapid response training, has been offered. You can find that on their website, and it's currently being used by thousands of officers and providing some very good tactics on campuses around the country. The other thing that we're working on now, and it just come onto the charter this year in 2013, is the National Center for Campus Public Safety. The center was created to provide a national focal point for the creation of a collaboration essential to advance in higher education campus public safety. The National Center will serve as a catalyst to bring stakeholders together across disciplines and jurisdictions to protect our students, faculty, staff, guests, visitors, and the critical infrastructures involved. The center will facilitate the creation of a national agenda and provide technical assistance, training, and national-level information and analysis capabilities to make available reliable and timely information to campus public safety around the country. The center will be a resource for campus police chiefs, directors of public safety, emergency managers, and key campus safety stakeholders across the spectrum. Of course, FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, continues to be an active resource through the 56 field offices around the country. And also, you can go to their website here to find out more information about how to respond to active shooter events on your campuses. Two resources that we want to make sure that everyone has is one is the International Association of Campus Law Enforcement Administrators, IHE, which they work to advance public safety for educational institutions. They have a membership of over 1,200 colleges and universities in 20 countries. The other one is the IACP, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, which is the world's oldest and largest nonprofit membership organization with almost 16,000 members in 94 countries. Through their university and college police section, they represent the interests of sworn law enforcement safety within the IACP. Both of these organizations are a resource available and I'd like to, are wonderful resources available for emergency management and planning. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Nancy Kelly, from Health and Human Services. Nancy.
Thank you, Calvin. This is Nancy Kelly, and I work in the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, specifically with emergency mental health and traumatic stress. One key resource that we have for IHEs in relation to emergency management and planning is psychological first aid, or PFA. Research shows that there are brief, effective interventions that have a long-lasting positive influence on trauma-related cases. PFA is an evidence-informed intervention model used to assist students, staff, and families in the immediate aftermath of an emergency or disaster, whether on or off campus grounds. It is designed to reduce the initial distress caused by emergencies, allows for the expression of difficult feelings, and assists students in developing coping strategies and constructive actions to deal with fear and anxiety. Providing this intervention can decrease the likelihood of mental health problems or long-term difficulties by identifying individuals who may need additional resources and linking them to such services as needed. PFA assumes that students and staff members may experience a broad range of early reactions, physical, cognitive, psychological, behavioral, spiritual, following the emergency. And some of these reactions can cause distress that interferes with adaptive coping, but support from informed, compassionate, and caring professionals can help students and staff members recover from these reactions. PFA has the potential to mitigate the development of severe mental health problems or long-term difficulties in recovery by identifying individuals who may need additional services and linking them to such services as needed. Some reactions will cause enough distress to interfere with adaptive coping, and recovery may be helped by support from compassionate and caring disaster responders. PFA does not assume that all survivors will develop severe mental health problems or long-term difficulties in recovery. A traumatic event is a sudden and unexpected occurrence that causes intense fear and may involve a threat of physical harm or actual physical harm. A traumatic experience may have a profound effect on the physical health, mental health, and development of the college student. How college students process trauma depends on their age and level of development. By understanding how students experience traumatic events and how they express their lingering distress over the experience, campus personnel can better respond and help them through this challenging time. Students traumatized by exposure to violence have been shown to have lower grade point averages, more negative remarks in their cumulative records, and more absences from class than other students. In spite of our ability to predict general responses to trauma, depending on age and developmental level, there is still tremendous variability among students regarding post-traumatic symptoms and the extent to which learning and campus behavior may be disrupted. The variety of individual responses to trauma is related to many factors, including a student's prior history of trauma or loss, prior or current mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, or behavior problems, and individual differences in temperament. Common reactions include serious interruptions to the campus routine and the processes of teaching and learning, high levels of emotional upset, potential for disruptive behavior or loss of student attendance, increased difficulties concentrating and learning in class, increased potential to engage in unusually reckless or aggressive behavior. So let's look at what we know about effects on college-age students. College students can be aged 18 to 80. How are the students connected to the college is one major way we want to consider. Responses can vary depending on age, but also their connection to the learning environment. Do they live on campus, in the dorms? Are they in off-campus housing? Is it a community college? Students could be living at home with their parents, families, or are they full-time students or part-time students? Are they returning vets? It is not only the connectedness to the IHE, but also the connectedness to the trauma. What is the culture and or climate of the IHE? These are important aspects to keep in mind when approaching the college-age population in responding to traumatic events. Their access to mental health and disaster behavioral health care is more varied. They can access student assistance centers, chapels, residence managers, health centers, peers, professors, etc. There are also varied reactions to consider when working with college-age students. They have a higher risk quotient because of their life experiences. Some of these reactions may be post-traumatic stress reactions. These are common, understandable, and expectable, but are nevertheless serious in the fact that they can begin to interfere with daily functioning and impede the recovery process. There are three types: intrusive, avoidance and withdrawal, and physical arousal reactions. There's also grief reactions. These are normal and vary from person to person. They can last for many years. There is no single correct way of grieving, and so we need to remember that when we're working with individuals who are experiencing grief reactions. There's traumatic grief, is when a person who has suffered the traumatic loss of someone close to them and they find it difficult to grieve. Depression can include depressed or irritable mood, change in sleep or appetite, decreased interest in activities, fatigue, and feelings of hopelessness and worthlessness. Physical symptoms can occur even in the absence of any underlying physical injury or illness. And trauma and loss reminders are things, events, situations, places, sensations, and even people that remind a person about a traumatic event or loss. PFA includes basic information gathering techniques to help providers make rapid assessment of survivors, immediate concerns and needs, and to implement supportive activities in a flexible manner. It establishes positive connection with students and staff members in a non-intrusive, compassionate manner. Any staff member, any campus personnel, regardless of whether he or she has had mental health training, can deliver aspects of PFA. Trained members of community emergency response agencies and mental health professionals may provide PFA. During and after an emergency, administrators and other campus staff are critical links in promoting resilience. in recognizing the signs of traumatic stress, and in helping students regain a sense of normalcy. These are basic objectives of PFA, and a few of them are to establish a positive connection with students and staff members in a non-obtrusive, compassionate manner, to connect students and campus staff members as soon as possible to social support networks, including family members, friends, coaches, and other campus or community groups, and to empower students and campus staff to take an active role in their recovery by acknowledging their coping efforts and strengths and supporting adaptive coping. College campuses are not only where students attend school, but often it is where they reside and can become a primary source of community support during and after the incident. In many ways, teachers and staff are the first and last responders for students in an emergency. Students look to the school administration, their professors, instructors, and campus security for leadership and guidance, while parents expect and demand that IHEs prepare and are prepared and respond competently in such situations. Emergency events that do not typically garner national headlines but do disrupt the learning environment include suicides, transportation accidents, peer victimization, community violence, staff or student deaths, injuries on the campus, and infectious diseases. Preparedness involves having a comprehensive response and recovery plan, training staff to address the immediate, midterm, and long-term needs of students and staff members, and frequent practicing of the comprehensive response and recovery plan, and lastly, evaluation and redesign of plan components that no longer meet operational standards for the IHE. When people are trained in emergency protocols, including students and the IHEs, and have knowledge of techniques to reduce anxiety and establish calm, they are better able to handle the emergency and be of help to the people affected. Having an effective campus psychosocial and mental health recovery plan in place, which includes interventions such as PFA, is critical when emergencies threaten to significantly disrupt the learning environment. Unaddressed mental health needs, including those from exposure to violence and other potentially traumatic events, increase dropout rates, lower academic achievement, disrupt peer relationships, and impact overall well-being. A growing body of research shows that there are brief, effective interventions that have a long-lasting positive influence on students and staff members trauma-related distress. PFA draws from the best available evidence identifying factors that promote improved student and staff functioning after disasters and other emergencies. PPD 8, a presidential directive, describes the national approach to the preparedness and defines preparedness around 5 mission areas, which are also reflected in the IHE Guide to High-Quality Emergency Operation Guides for the IHEs referenced in the ED portion of this webinar. And those 5 areas are prevention, protection, mitigation, response, and recovery. Prevention means the capabilities necessary to avoid, deter, or stop an imminent crime or threatened or actual mass casualty incident. Protection means the capabilities to secure IHEs against acts of violence and man-made or natural disasters. Mitigation means the capabilities necessary to eliminate or reduce the loss of life and property damage by lessening the impact of an event or emergency. Response means the capabilities necessary to stabilize an emergency once it has already happened or is certain to happen in an unpreventable way. And recovery means the capabilities necessary to assist IHEs affected by an event or emergency in restoring the learning environment. These mission areas generally align with the 3 time frames associated with an incident: before, during, and after. Being prepared before an emergency takes place is critical to effectively responding and hastening the recovery process. During, PFA can be implemented by a team that is part of the response team. And after, PFA will assist in immediate recovery efforts and work to build short and long-term supports for the IHE and community. Personal and professional requirements to deliver PFA is make sure you can coordinate with appropriate IHE officials before service delivery begins. PFA providers should learn about the IHE community, identifying the distinguishing features of the event, be aware of at-risk populations, veterans, students with disabilities or other impairments, and be sensitive to racial and cultural diversity. Here are a few resources available to IHEs regarding PFA that you might find useful. The first one is on the National Child Traumatic Stress Network, and you can download for free the entire Psychological First Aid Field Operator's Guide. And there's also online learning opportunities to learn how to deliver and to set up PFA in your IHE, and as well as some tip sheets from the SAMHSA Disaster Technical Assistance Center around college students after disaster or other traumas. And now I'd like to turn it back over to the REMS TA Center staff. Sean?
Thanks, Nancy. And now we have take a few questions from our participants. Remember, if you haven't already asked a question, pose your question using the Q&A chat function on the lower right side of your computer screen, and to type either the agency acronym, name of the agency, or the name of the presenter in front of each question to indicate to whom you are directing the question.
Sean, this is Amy. Wanted to let you know that we do have a couple of questions. And the first question was directed to Ed, but really can be responded to better by FEMA. So I'm wondering if Doc can answer. The question is, if an IHE has used the CPG 101 to develop their EOP, do you consider this also to be adequate?
Sure. So the short answer is yes, that a plan developed using 101 will meet the elements of the IHE guide. I would suggest, however, that even if you use 101 to develop a plan, that you look at the IHE guide, because it contains information that is targeted to IHEs, information on the run, hide, fight approach, information on recovery in particular, as was discussed, the psychological piece, that I think could fill out elements of your existing IHE plan.
Great. And we do have another question. Doc, this is also for you at FEMA. It says, which NIMS implementation guide should be used since the latest guidance document is dated 2009-2010? Is there something more up to date?
Actually, no. We try not to mess with the NIMS doctrine that often, so that is the right stuff. We will be doing an update of the NIMS doctrine next calendar year in 2014, but we are describing that more as a refresh than a full-scale upheaval or revision. So I would expect the core NIMS doctrine to remain largely unchanged.
Great, thank you. There's another question for me at Ed, and this says, I noticed you refer to it as an EOP, Emergency Operations Plan. There are a lot of terms out there, Emergency Management Plan, etc. Does Ed want us to standardize terminology? The answer is yes and no. Basically, in terms of what you call your plan, that's completely up to you. That's not something that needs to be standardized. But generally, NIMS does require consistent, plain language, and Doc can add to this if I'm saying anything incorrectly, but NIMS generally provides a consistent nationwide approach and vocabulary such that multiple agencies or jurisdictions can work together. So we do request that plain language is used and practiced within your plan, such that when you are responding to something, that's what's being used. But in terms of the name of your plan, that is not standardized now.
Yeah, and this is Doc. Thinking back on our discussions, I think the piece you've hit on is the real substance of the matter, and that is NIMS and some level of consistency. So in most jurisdictions around the country, if you're working with state or local emergency management officials or tribal emergency management officials, they will refer to it as an emergency operations plan. So whether you choose to call yours that or not, just make sure that you're aware that when we talk about those things, we're talking about the same thing, just so folks can more readily understand where everybody's operating from and ease information sharing.
Great. Thank you, Doc. Here's a question for Calvin, Justice.
Yep.
Are there best practices for accounting for all persons on an open campus that are hundreds of acres in size?
There should be additional information on that. That's a great question. There should be additional information on that coming out soon. I believe that IACP and IHE have been put a group together that's looking at large campuses and how the best practice of how to fill in some of these functional annexes with some stuff that a lot of campuses never really thought about before.
Great. And we can also reference that on the REMS TA Center website when that resource becomes available so that everybody can have access to that. Another question for you, Calvin. Your list of functional annexes, is that a formal inclusive list? Is there a list of required annexes?
Doc could probably speak to it better than I, but as far as DOJ is concerned, all functional annexes are, while being optional, they are recommended. And what we really are talking about is you should be having conversations around all those functional annexes to at least try to answer those questions for yourself. Maybe, possibly, every single thing that's brought up may not make it as a formal annex, into the report, but the conversation should be had locally about whether it should be there or not.
Yeah, and this is Doc. I couldn't agree with Calvin more. And keep in mind, some of these annexes may be literally, 2, 3, 4 pages, to meet the needs of your campus. We recognize every campus is different, but we tried to keep the list of functional annexes to those that we thought would be universal. Again, to Calvin's point, our intent is that at minimum you have a dialogue around all those functions, and where necessary, that you then document that into an annex.
Great. Thank you. Another question for Justice. Calvin, are there any plans to... Sorry?
Rock and roll.
Are there any plans to make grants? Are there any plans to make grants available to non-sworn agencies?
This has constantly been a question. Right now, our current grants in the COPS office are only for sworn agencies. But remember, you can always use block grant money, which comes from the Office of Justice programs, can be used for non-sworn officers, possibly, according to the individual criteria. So there are methods in order to use them. There are methods to use grant funds for such things.
Thank you. This question is directed at Calvin, Department of Justice, again. It says, however, I think any of us can answer, would you recommend publicizing our IHE EOP annexes?
I think everybody could probably fill in on this, but the justice opinion on this would be that, yes, you should publicize it, but it really depends on the level of transparency that your IHE is comfortable with. There is, how you're going to put it out, where you're going to put it out, but it definitely should be at least well known to the campus community, to the people that should know, and then you can make an individual decision on how much students should know, the community should know, and things like that.
The way that we have discussed it is that parts of the plan can be made available depending on what is appropriate. So that is an individual decision by your particular IHE. So the next question is there a good training course available for staff and faculty on how to respond to an active shooter incident? And Calvin, I would direct this to you again at Justice.
If you look back at the slides, the alert training does the exact same thing. There's some training there, and the EMI Institute could help you with some of the functional things of getting your team together to be able to do that. But also, the immediate thing I would do is I would ask anybody to contact one of their local FBI field offices who are running alert training in the local field offices to see when they're having that training, and you can participate in that.
And just to add to Calvin's comments, this is Doc. As he mentioned, the EMI courses, we recently updated those to incorporate active shooter elements into those courses. So if you've been through those courses before, even if you're not in a position to resit through the course, I would certainly get a copy of the revised course information so you could see how active shooter was included.
We we have a question for Nancy at HHS regarding psychological first aid, PFA. And the question is, how is this different from critical incident stress management?
We don't recommend CISM. I'm not really a proponent of it here at SAMHSA. CISM has the survivor relive the traumatic event, and there is some research showing that that may not be as helpful as originally thought. CISM is a longer-term event. Ours, PFA, not ours, it's not ours, but PFA builds on the resiliency and recovery and the immediate coping and just a more positive, informal, not as structured process as CISM. I'd be happy to send some resources out if the individual would like it.
Okay, we can also make any additional resources made available when we archive the webinar. And then finally, we have two questions on funding, wondering if there is any funding available for local schools to improve access controls and communication, and if there are any of the other funding sources besides the COPS grant. And if several of us could respond, I'll just respond. Generally speaking, that at ED, we don't currently have grants to schools or IHEs for emergency management funding. However, there were several proposals put forth in the President's Plan that came out in January of 2013 called Now is the Time, which you can download for free or access on the White House website. And that plan is what initiated the IHE guide along with the K-12 and Houses of Worship guide. And that plan includes some proposals. So again, we can't predict if those proposals would be funded or not by Congress. However, we do have some general information on federal grants that either are directly or indirectly available to a K-12 or IHE institution. So if anybody else has something to add on that. Okay, so Sean, that looks like those are our questions. I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. Thanks everyone for participating in our webinar and Q&A session. We hope that today's presentation provided you with a better understanding of using federal resources to enhance campus security and emergency management planning. We invite you to visit the REMS TA Center website at http://rems.ed.gov to view or share the archived webinar, access the collaborative guides, and or find resources pertaining to campus security, as well as additional resources, publications, and trainings to help you in your emergency operations planning efforts for schools. Thank you again for joining us today. This concludes our webinar.